Welcome to Putting It Together, the podcast that goes through the entire body of work of Stephen Sondheim, show by show and song by song. My name is Kyle Marshall, your self-described Sondheim expert. You know, this week we are in this section of the show Passion where it's kind of just a lot of short, some would say perfunctory songs, or as Sondheim continues to put it, songettes. And yet, wouldn't you know it, we're still able to fill an entire episode discussing the themes and musical decisions and lyric choices within these three. So, without further ado, let's get into this week's episode where we're going through a few different ones of those with returning guest Alex Asp.
Both of them were soaked to the skin. Where had they been? On the bluff. Were they all alone? No one knows. You don't
Alex Asp, thank you so much for coming back to the show.
Wonderful to be back.
So I think we need to start with talking about passion in general here. Something that I have definitely had varying levels of experience with, I guess, with the guests that have been on here this season is exactly when you first arrive at passion and when you start to actually enjoy it. So not to put words in your mouth, but have you started to enjoy it? And when did you first get introduced to passion?
So I think Passion was one of the many CDs that I ripped from the library back in high school and really did not care for it. The album artwork was not that exciting. I listened to it and I was like, I don't understand what's going on here. And so it just kind of passed out of my consciousness for a very long time, and really didn't come back in any significant way until I started diving really deep into the Sondheim works at the beginning of COVID. Mm-hmm. And so I think I started by watching the PBS broadcast on YouTube, and I hated it so much. I hated Fosca so much.
Interesting. Okay.
And this music is beautiful, but I do not like this show at all. It is. I was so turned off by how manipulative Fosca is. Especially certain things that bring to light a previous relationship with somebody who had some of those emotional manipulative tendencies that really just immediately set me against Fosca.
Sure.
And the fact that then she was rewarded by Giorgio actually choosing her at the end. Yeah. And I still don't fully understand that. Like, logically, I get it, but it feels a little bit just we're going to turn the switch and all of a sudden he loves Fosca now. Mm-hmm. But I, over time, have heard, different versions and seen some different versions online, and talking to people have had a better view of Fosca as a character and grown to enjoy the show a lot more. And I'm very excited to get to see it this summer. Theater Latte Da here in Minneapolis is putting it on, which will be the first major U.S. production since 2018 when Signature did it.
Oh, that's crazy.
So
okay.
It's nice that it's actually available to see for once, which is not a common thing.
No, but that was one of the questions I was going to bring up. Because you do run the website, the Sondheim database, you would actually have the hard data probably in front of you about how often Passion gets done, which I would assume is on the lower end of Sondheim shows. That's me making that up, I guess, a little bit. But how often does it get produced?
Let me look here. So it's actually around once per year on average since it came out. Mm-hmm. It's been done by a major production, either in the US, UK, or very little internationally, but a little bit. But yeah, the last couple that have been, that I've put on the database are international, UK and Philippines, but really there's not a whole lot that I'm not having to maintain the Passion page very much because not much changes.
I would love to actually go and see a production of this someday, especially in a performance space that is much more intimate. I feel like this is one of those shows where you try and blow this up into too big of an auditorium. I think it maybe loses a lot of its power. You need to have that much more smaller feeling. But yeah, I'm excited for you to let me know how that production goes. I was going to say though, as far like in regards to your feelings with Fosca, you don't have to agree with this, but I did have a guest that I recently talked to who mentioned that at least when he originally watched it, it was one of those things where it's kind of like this little trick that's being done. It's like the reverse of the 1980s, 1990s, like sex thrillers that were so popular there for a while, where it's like you start off with someone that you empathize with and then they become crazy. And this is the reverse of that, where you start with someone who's crazy that you try to empathize with at the very, very end, once you see like some of her backstory and stuff like that. But I don't know if you actually agree with that setup.
I mean, to what extent is the question, I guess. I'm not sure that I fully get around to sympathizing with Fosca, but you definitely do understand her a lot more as you get more of her story.
When you do re-engage with this, are you more likely to go to the original Broadway cast, or are there one of those other productions that you find better encapsulates it for you?
It kind of depends on what mood I'm in, I guess. The 2013 recording is really nice because it has a lot more of the show.
That's the Judy Kuhn one, yeah.
And so, I mean, Judy Kuhn is just always amazing to listen to, and Rebecca Luker. But sometimes I'm not in the mood to actually have all the dialogue and the extra stuff. So more often than not, I probably go back to the original Broadway cast. I've listened a little bit to the German one and the Dutch one, which are interesting.
Yeah.
I never really go back to London. I cannot stand what Maria Friedman is doing with her voice, why it's so breathy and husky. I don't get it.
People can write in on what their favorite versions and stuff are too. I actually had the hardest time finding different recordings for this show. I don't know if this is a Canadian thing or what, but really the original Broadway cast is really the only one that is readily available. And then there is on YouTube, I can find other recordings, but as far as like streaming services or to purchase, it's like, no, nothing is available.
I know the 2013 recording is available in the US for streaming. It's weird that it would be so vastly different, so nearby.
Oh, my friend, if you want to open up a can of worms, this is like every Canadian's frustration of things that are available in America that are not available in Canada. And it becomes so bizarre about rights issues and that sort of thing, about what is and what isn't. The only plus side is that because our copyright rules in Canada are different, we do get things that come into the public domain before they become public domain in the US. So that's one bright spot, I suppose.
Yeah, that's something at least.
So before we get into actually talking about the song cycle, I guess, that we're about to get into, I guess, is there any other like hot takes or anything that you have about this show? I know you said it took you were kind of like negative towards it at first, but as far as the actual show itself, anything that you perceive now?
I think the biggest fascination for me is how completely different the character arc of Fosca can be depending on the actress playing her and what choices they make, as well as just some inherent personality things. I think part of what pushed me away so much with Donna Murphy's Fosca is that there's something in her eye that tells you she is very intelligent. She is not flippantly doing things very often. And so all of these behaviors, at least to me, feel much more intentionally manipulative versus watching the Lincoln Center, live from Lincoln Center performance with Patti LuPone. Something about how she portrays Fosca just reads a lot more as fear. Not that she's trying to manipulate, but she's just so desperately trying to hold on to Giorgio that she's doing all of these things you can even see that she realizes how crazy she's being sometimes, but just can't stop herself because she's so afraid of losing this glimmer of hope that came into her life. And that just really changes how I feel about all the dynamics based on that one small acting choice. And there's not a whole lot of characters that it's that drastic of a swing based on how the actor chooses to play it.
Well, yeah, sticking with the character of Fosca specifically, I think this is one of the aspects of theater that personally that I really, really love, especially when we now can see visual evidence of different performances. It does really impact the piece depending on how the actors and directors and other key creatives decide to interpret the work. I'm not necessarily so keen when people try to input different, like their own ideas necessarily into it. That can sometimes work, sometimes not. But when it's just on the page, I'm performing this as written, but bringing in like a new layer or a different, like interpretation into that, while keeping everything else the same, that becomes really interesting. And I think you're right. I think that there is a way to play Fosca that is much more like calculated and like I am doing this intentionally. I'm zeroing in on like my victim and I'm enacting a plan from start to finish type of thing, right? And there's like the almost complete opposite of that, which is no, this is a compulsion I have, and because of my past, I'm afraid that this person is going to leave me, and this is coming up, like I said, either from a place of fear or a place of woundedness or something like that I need to cling on to. I guess what I'm leading up to saying is, do you prefer the Patti LuPone interpretation?
As far as if I'm trying to like Fosca, yes. I would be, yeah, I also think just it really shapes how Fosca is behaving based on how your Giorgio is. Michael Cerveris kind of commands the show and makes it feel a lot more centered around Giorgio. So Fosca is not as important to how you perceive the show overall. Versus in the original, Donna Murphy had the top billing. Jerry Shea is not. It feels like it's Fosca's show, not Giorgio's.
Actually, again, talking about key creatives, I think this is like a really hot take, perhaps. This might be where like Lapine and Sondheim, weirdly enough, missed the mark of what they were even creating to a certain extent. Because Sondheim has now since admitted, he says it in this book, Look, I Made a Hat, that it took him until the Donmar production of it? But he's like, oh, this show is about Giorgio, not about Fosca. I'm like, well, yeah, I don't know why. It's such an odd thing for one of the creators to say, to me at least, because it's like when you read the book or watch the movie, it's like, that's what it's about. Like, it's about Giorgio's like journey through this. And I would agree that it really does focus on Fosca in that original production.
Yeah, I mean, Jerry Shea seems like a very wonderful person, but he's much more mild-mannered. And like you said, if Sondheim and Lapine were not intentionally putting Giorgio at the center, Jerry Shea was not going to take it and make himself the center. So kind of a combination of things together there.
The other thing, I don't know if you have any type of like insight on here. I don't even know what my feeling is on this ultimately. I'm trying to figure out what my feelings truly are. But like, why I think the Fosca character is so hard to really nail down, especially on a Broadway stage, is that, as described, this character is supposed to be quote unquote ugly when we first meet them. And really, no matter what you do to Donna Murphy or G. Kuhn, like, these are still beautiful women that are coming up on the stage when they first enter on. So unless you really try to use makeup or some other type of appliances to do a physical transformation to them, there's that way. But because I think our society, and even when the novel was written, is so focused on external beauty as a shortcut to, worthiness and stuff like that. I don't know how that intersects for you. This person is quote unquote ugly, but it's like, we can still see this person as like a gorgeous person. So like, how do we weigh that?
And I think with Donna Murphy, the way that she plays it, it feels to me like the real story is that Fosca is more plain.
Yeah.
And was kind of called ugly just because people wanted her to be more beautiful or whatever they wanted. And then she just kind of accepted that. And so you get that feeling a lot from Donna Murphy in how she holds her posture, the facial expressions she uses, a lot of things that are not physical attributes, but just the way that she carries herself gives that kind of wretched impression still, which kind of could bring an interesting dimension into it of, is Fosca actually ugly, or is she just off-putting to the point that people treat her differently, and then she acted even more different and kind of fed into it. So I don't know. That's something that I thought about this last time I rewatched it. Just, she's not ugly, but she is off-putting still, which is, I guess, a distinction.
I think, yeah, absolutely. I think that's a distinction. I think that you might have hit on something here. It's one of those weird things. If it's said enough times, sometimes you do start to internalize those outward thoughts. And maybe with, her interactions with other people in the past, that was just the easiest word to use, is ugly, when really they meant off-putting. And then she kind of just leans into that.
And that could just be me making up a backstory to make it make sense. But who knows?
Who knows, indeed. Hi everyone, just Kyle breaking into the conversation to tell you about some of the people that help this show continue to go. If you'd like to help support the show for absolutely free, you can give a rating and review on whatever app you listen to podcasts in. That's of course greatly appreciated. Putting It Together is an independent podcast, so if you'd like to help monetarily, which will only help to grow and make this show better, you can do so over at our Patreon page. Please do not donate if it impacts you negatively financially. I also need to give a huge thank you to the God That's Good tier from Patreon. That's Alex, Barry, Christopher, David, Jack, Luis, Michael, Mika, Robert, Stephen, and Whitty. All right, let's get back to the show. Well, Alex, what are we here to discuss today?
So we are discussing a few small segments. Soldiers Gossip number 2, transition number 4 into 40 days.
Yes. So I made the joke before we started recording. I'm going to make it again. This might not be the most thematically rich section of the show necessarily, but I think with these songs as well as the book scenes that are interspersed through this, that there is a lot that's going on here, at least narratively. So we're going to actually talk about the train scene here as well, so that we can kind of just round out the conversation a little bit.
I did have to make a timeline for myself because these events, it's hard to keep them all in order. When you're reading the book, there are no song titles. It's very easy to get yourself confused on that.
Yeah,
so I get that.
Turned around, it's I'll be the one who says for some reason in my head I always kept thinking that that rain sequence, when the rain comes down, comes after the train. It's well, no, because that leads into what the train becomes. That's why he's going away for 40 days. Anyways, you're right. It gets all what the actual order of events are sometimes get jumbled in my head a bit. If you can recall, before this sequence starts, what has just happened in the show?
So Giorgio has gone off away from everybody else to kind of get some respite from Fosca and to read a letter from Clara in private. And then Fosca follows him there. Mm-hmm. So they have an argument. And then as he goes to leave, she faints and it starts to rain. And he thinks about leaving her there, but then he's okay, I guess not. And then he carries her back, which causes the others to speculate on things.
That's right. You see the hamster wheel spinning of I could just kill two birds with one stone here if I just leave her to succumb to the elements sort of thing. But it's his good nature wins out at the end.
Have to be honorable.
Yeah, that's right. He's a soldier after all. So, okay, so...
And a hero.
That's correct.
At least half a hero.
He'll always be a full hero to me. Let's start with let's just start with this soldier's gossip. Now, these soldiers all have individual names, but there is no way that I'll ever know which one is which, I'm sorry to say. But to give credit where
absolutely not.
To give credit where it's due, also to make this even extra hard, is that there's the same actor who played the boatman in Sunday in the Park with George. There's another voice there that's from another Sondheim show. Anyways,
Chris Gronendahl, I think, is in that cast.
This always makes me think that I'm about to hear the Soldier song from Sunday in the Park with George, just because there's some similar voices and stuff going on.
I bet somebody's done that at a cabaret.
That's right. Yeah, you can probably play around with that. So who do we have here? We have Tarasso, Rizzoli, Agenti, Bari. I'm probably butchering all these names. Anyways, those are some of the names that are amongst this group of soldiers here, which at least in the Broadway show are all, in my opinion, are all fairly interchangeable. They do get given in the novel and the movie time to be very individual characters, but this is not the show that we need to get individual characters. They are here for kind of comedic relief, and that's all that we really care about here in this case. So let me read through what they sing. I'm just going to do the whole song here because it's pretty short, but both of them soaked to the skin. Where had they been? On the bluff. Were they all alone? No one knows. You don't suppose. Ugh, gentlemen, enough. Still, it would explain Signora's attitude, why she comes to every meal. It isn't for the veal, and it would explain the colonel's gratitude. I hear he calls him Giorgio, but nobody is that brave. No, that's cheek. Nobody is that brave. Wouldn't you like to peek? Ugh, gentlemen, I think I'll change my wager. He'll be major next week. I'll say.
Both of them were soaked to the skin. Where had they been? On the bluff. Were they all alone? No one knows. You don't suppose. Gentlemen, enough. Still, it would explain Signora's attitude. Why she comes to every meal. It isn't for the veal. Still, it would explain the colonel's gratitude. I hear he calls him Giorgio. But nobody is that brave. No, that's cheek. Nobody is that brave. Wouldn't you like to peek?
Oh, gentlemen, I think I'll change my wager. He'll be major next week.
I'll say.
I think it's, first of all, interesting that while so much of the show is not rhymed, is not structured very rigidly, this is very much more Sondheimian rhymes, internal rhyme schemes, complicated. It's kind of not only a comedic relief, but a relief from the form that we've been dealing with. So it just feels good-natured and kind of relaxing in that sense too.
Right.
But it's interesting that they don't really seem to care about Fosca at all, except when there's something interesting to gossip about and speculate and make up relationships and motives. And not only are they saying that, oh, well, maybe they're hooking up, but also, oh, the colonel must like that. When actually later, when the colonel finds out, he's quite unhappy about it.
That's right.
But it's just, I think it's just something for them to do while they're, having their typical day, and gotta have something to make it interesting.
Right. As the doctor says, right, there's only two things they ever talk about, which is women and horses. So, I mean, this is a woman that they get to discuss here now and like gossip among themselves. There's not really much else to talk about here, I guess, on this base.
Yeah, I do love the callback and the line, I'll change my wager, he'll be major next week.
Yeah.
It's just a fun little, a good rhyme, but also, the cheek that he is expressing is fun.
Yeah, I mean, when you talk about the rhymes here, there's really, like you said, there's really some fun ones that are sprinkled throughout this. You just called out one of them, but the other one, where had they been on the bluff? And then later on, he actually rhymes that with gentlemen enough, right? So it's like his little interjections here with some of the other people are actually callbacks to other rhymes. Wouldn't you like to peak? That's what rhymes with next week, right? With that he mentions later on, he'll be major next week. So there's all these really fun things that are all sprinkled through here as multiple characters are breaking in and singing different lines.
It's also interesting that they're not necessarily even talking to each other. Mm-hmm. They're just kind of all talking at the same time. It's like the wouldn't you like to peak line presumably would be something about Fosca and Giorgio, but it comes right after they're talking about the colonel. So clearly he's not listening to what the others are saying. He's just doing his own thing, because this is not a conversation to share information. It is just idle chatter. So who cares what you said? I'm going to say whatever I want.
Right. Now, I wouldn't say that this is uproariously hilarious content that we're going through here. At the same time,
but comparatively.
At the same time, Sondheim was kind of adamant that he just wanted this to have like this one kind of tone throughout. Like it was like this simmering anxiety throughout. And it was James Lapine who was like, we have to have some relief through this night, or people are going to just be sitting in like the wrong emotion for too long, which I actually tend to agree more with Lapine here in this case. I actually think that that's the right call. So I guess this is a two-part question. First, do you agree with James Lapine that there needed to be humorous moments? And I guess B is like, but is this humorous enough for you?
I think it's a good compromise, because it's more so than the humor. It's lighthearted and not oppressive. I think, part of what makes Sondheim overall so special is his commitment to the artistic integrity of what he's creating.
Sure.
And caring less about the commercial appeal of it. So in that sense, he was right. Thematically, it makes more sense to stay in that dark place and never come up for air. But as an audience member, I agree with Lapine that we need something, or else this is just, no one's going to appreciate it, because everybody was too morose and just trying to not fall asleep with Fosca being annoying yet again.
I would say that you also run the risk, I'm sure that this criticism was leveled anyways, but you run the risk of things becoming too self-serious and almost pretentious then at that case, where it's like, come on, like we need something to go on here. Yeah,
and even in opera, which in some ways this is structured like.
Don't tell Sondheim that, but yeah, sure.
Oh, no, never. This is very, it's very common to have some kind of clown-like character to do the same thing of come in and break up the seriousness every now and then.
Yeah, I mean, that's true for like even...
So it's not unprecedented.
Well, Shakespeare was the same way, right? Like even in his most like tragic of tragedies, there's usually the fool who gets sent out at one point to be like, okay, make the audience laugh, and now we're back into like the grimness of everything.
I am surprised that this is not done by more opera companies.
Yeah, you're not the first person to mention that, and I totally agree. I don't understand why more opera companies don't pick this up.
It must be because Fosca is not in a range that a lot of opera singers want to sing. That would be my only guess, because Clara is a beautiful part for any opera singer. You get a nice soprano, she'll love it.
That's true. It's also maybe too short. I don't know. Maybe they want their longer operas.
They do like them long, yeah.
Just sustain all the notes. Just make everything go twice as slow, and then it'll be fine.
Or as in Amadeus, the Emperor says, there's just too many notes.
That's right.
I think you should take some out. Which ones should I take out?
So we then... Actually, it's not in the book here, so I don't know if there's like anything that comes in between this, or I don't recall. But one thing that is pointed out here, the I'll say thing at the very end, there's this character named Rizzoli, who does not join in on one of those I'll says. And he takes over this transition moment to sing, to feel a woman's touch, to touch a woman's hand, reminded me how much I long to be with you. How long I'd been without you near, and then to hear a woman's voice, to hold a woman's arm, to feel a woman's touch.
To feel a woman's touch, to touch a woman's hand, reminded me how much I long to be with you, how long I've been without you near, and then to hear a woman's voice, to hold a woman's arm, to feel a woman's touch.
Technically, I think the nightmare is before the transition. Am I correct?
I think you might be right. I just don't think it writes that down here in this book.
No, it's not in the book. It's not on the original cast album. But when I was, like I said, I made a timeline to keep straight when things happen.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of, he comes back in to bring things back with words that Giorgio had sent to Clara in a letter earlier. And I was trying to think of a specific meaning behind why the soldiers, reprising these words specifically in this transition. And maybe I'm just not cultured enough, but I couldn't quite think of a good reason. What if this is, is this just a way to fill space, or are these words in particular supposed to have a second meaning here?
Good question. And I don't know if I'm going to give a very great answer here. I think dramatically we're bringing the idea of Clara back into the narrative here. So I think that that's the reason why we're bringing back those phrases specifically. Now, why it has to be the soldier who's doing that, that's where I'm a little bit curious, because some of the other transitions that you see through the show, just practically it's because, well, the soldiers are on stage, so they're going to sing a transition. Or it's like the attendants are on stage, so they're going to sing the transition as we're changing the scenery. And it's like, okay, that kind of just makes sense. These letters that we've been hearing sung back and forth are going to be filtered through. My question personally is, are we supposed to think that these are just like these effervescent phrases that are being recalled, or are these people somehow, are the attendants reading the letters too? Like, are they sneaking peeks and like singing back to themselves, and they kind of know what's going on, and that's somehow filtering out to the rest of the people on stage? That I don't know.
I don't know, but I think that'd be funny if that was what they were doing. So that probably wasn't what they intended, since Sondheim did not want it to be funny. It's just, I think it's probably just keeping the mood, and we're probably overthinking it quite a lot.
I wanted to see if there's anything that I can see about this character in particular, and all it's telling me, this website's only going to allow me to read a certain amount, and then it won't let me see anything more. That's not very helpful. I was just going to see what his position actually is, if this will tell me. Let's see what...
I have it here. I think it's Major Rizzoli.
Yeah, Major Rizzoli. Just a major. I'm just wondering if it's something from the film itself that they're bringing in here that's more subtle than that, of like why he's singing about it. Like, is there a person that he loves too? That's why he's the one chosen to sing this transition. I don't think it has anything to do specifically with Clara, like his relationship with her, because of course they don't know each other. But I feel that there has to be a reason why they chose.
Maybe they just liked how it sounded in his voice.
Well, that could also be true. I just feel that there's probably an intended reason, subtle or maybe not so subtle, of like, it's this supporting character we're getting to sing this by himself. It's one thing if it's a group, because then a group I could just hand wave away a little bit easier. But because they've chosen only one person to sing it, it feels intentional that they're getting this one person to sing it.
And he came from off stage to sing it, if I'm not mistaken. Because right before this, it's just Giorgio and the doctor. So he had to come out to sing it, and he's not in the next scene. So he's only there to sing that song. So It's not, like you said before, it's not just convenient because he's on stage already.
So yeah, this is a great then call out for people who are listening. If you have like a great theory, or like a Kyle, you're so dumb, this is like the most obvious reason why they've chosen this character to sing this portion. You could definitely send that in. That'd be really helpful. I want to though ask my favorite question that has been brought through different episodes this season, because this does have that interplay between Giorgio and the doctor, is what's up with this doctor character? Do you think there's anything going on with this doctor? I keep bringing up how I feel that there's something off-putting about the doctor himself. There seems to be something underneath his character that's not being fully said. So like, he's not completely benign. Yeah. There's something going on here.
Yeah, I think, so I've heard you talk about this on earlier episodes, and I kind of go back and forth on different things. Watching the movie, he kind of seemed more not very good at his job, but not wanting people to find out.
Right.
And so he's just trying to do these strange treatments of bringing a man to Fosca's room, and then, oh shit, that didn't really work. I shouldn't have done that. Sorry, got to change course. And just kind of reacting, and rather than having a plan. But then, Tom Aldridge gives a very different kind of vibe of very stern and just, I'm in control of things. Ultimately, it feels more to me just like the Doctor is bored and wants to, play with people like their toys, and then things get out of control. He's like, okay, got to shut this down.
have to fix this real quick. I feel like he's always about to tell me a fairy tale.
Amen.
Yeah.
He really should. That would have brought the mood way up.
That's true. Okay. So then our final thing we're going to discuss here today is this songette that's called 40 Days. This is Clara coming back on stage because Giorgio is reading this letter on the train. It's a previous letter from Clara. So Clara comes on to sing her part as he's reading, and she goes, Giorgio, darling, 40 days leave so soon. Imagine that, a whole 40 days. Well, 40 matinees. I'll be there to greet the train that carried you away from me because it brings you home. I'm filling up the room, our little room, with every flower in bloom. I'll have the fire lit, the table set. I'll wear the blue chemise. And once we're in our room, our secret room, where I'll be able to care for you, kiss you, embrace you, be there for you. Then the train whistle blows and there's Fosca.
Giorgio, darling, 40 days leave so soon. Imagine that, a whole 40 days. Well, 40 matinees. I'll be there to greet the train that carried you away from me because it brings you home. I'm filling up the room, a little room, with every flower in bloom. I'll have the fire lit, the table set. I'll wear the blue chemise, and once we're in our room, our secret room, where I'll be able to care for you, kiss you, embrace you, be there for you.
I love that she is being so excited and bubbly, and then has to kind of catch herself with 40 matinees, like, oh yeah, this isn't a real, they're still having the affair. They still have to keep it secret. It's not all roses and flowers. There's still the reality that they have to deal with.
I do like, I don't know, it's a poetic way to communicate this. Yes, it's 40 days leave that he has, but she is not spending 40 days with him, right? It's like a couple of hours, maybe even like 3 hours or something with him on those 40 days because, she has to be home for her husband at night. Like, she has a child, so she can't just leave for like hours and hours of time. I don't know. That's like, it's you're right when you say she catches herself, because it's so optimistic, and then it immediately turns into like a reality check.
But then she still kind of bounces back into, well, what am I going to wear? I didn't know what a chemise was until I had to look it up, which is just a nightgown, but apparently a much fancier word for it. But then, like, she kind of is, oh, I'm going to take care of you. But how is she going to really take care of him when she can only be there a very small amount of time each day? Not clear. So I think even after she checks herself, it comes right back, and immediately she's back in that fantasy of everything's going to be wonderful and it'll be just like it used to be.
Right. Something else that we've been kind of bringing up here repeatedly is how much within the lyrics, even the cracks of this relationship not being able to last are really sprinkled throughout when Clara comes on, she sings. One of those aspects is that where it's like there's like these like, well, like, we're gonna spend all of our time together here. But also I think that this is such a direct comparison point between how Fosca has been using the language of love now up until this point. We're seeing this in stark contrast, where Clara is still really only focusing on like the physical aspects of this relationship, whereas Fosca has been focusing much more on like the emotions of it and like the other aspects that love entails. And Clara's just like, yeah, we're gonna get a room and we're gonna like have sex a lot, and like that's basically what this is, and that's all that this is.
Especially with, it sets up the stark contrast that is about to happen when Fosca sings Loving You, and then she asks, would Clara die for you? Like, well, I think we all know the answer to that question.
Yeah, no, she has to be home by 4, so
yeah. So I think it's from a storytelling perspective, a great way to highlight exactly what you said. We're going to have these two kind of sung monologues right next to each other that are very different in how they're approaching the concept of love.
Mm-hmm. I mean, to broaden that out here a little bit, like in my interpretation, I'm so open to other people having different ideas on this, but from my interpretation, the only time we like really actually see Clara is at the very beginning of the show. In the song Happiness, as like Giorgio is with her in real time, we are actually getting to see her and her reactions in real time. And every other moment we see her is in the context of a letter being read. So it's like it's Giorgio's interpretation of what she's sounding like while she's writing that letter to him. So with that caveat, I'm just saying, like, how do you read this character of Clara? Is there anything more deeper with her that you can see?
Well, I think we get her in person during the trio.
Oh, I guess that's true. Yeah.
When they're having sex and Fosca is reading the letter that he had promised her. But yeah, in general, it does beg the question, are we actually seeing Clara, or are we seeing Giorgio's imagination of Clara? Which I think you could have fun with, interpreting it either way, if you're playing the acting choices.
Yeah.
I think, especially watching the live from Lincoln Center broadcast with Audra McDonald as Clara, the way she plays it is definitely not how Giorgio would imagine it. And so it's giving it much more of this is a real kind of vibe. Like you see the pain on her face in certain moments, much more so than Maren Maisie does. And so it could be that Maren Maisie was playing it much more the idolized version versus Audra playing, you're seeing both of them separated by time and space.
By the way, I just have to say, of like some of the major productions, boy, have they had home runs as far as vocalists for Clara. It's just a great collection of singers and actresses.
Oh, yeah. I mean, it's an amazing part if you've got someone who can sing it and people want to sing it, so you get the best.
Right. I guess anything else that you want to bring up about any of these songs? Is there anything that we haven't covered?
I'm trying to think this, other than before Fosca enters, this might be one of the longer stretches where she's not on stage, which is kind of interesting to have that little bit of a breather right before the big turning point of the show.
Yeah. I mean, there's two things about that, right? Which is the first major thing here is like there is a story that I've read about at least one audience's reaction of groaning when Fosca is revealed here at the train station, because you're right, she's off stage for a while. So people think, oh, okay, we're going into the other section of this story. We're seeing these lovers reconnect. That's what this story is about, to set up like the tension for the rest of this dramatic piece. Again, if you've not seen the movie and you didn't read the book, then you might just not know where this is going to. And then people groaning when Fosca reemerges, and they're like, oh, come on, we thought we were done with this character for a while.
When we saw her, she passed out. We were hoping that was the end.
Yeah. But I think this does mean that we should have a bit of a broader conversation here with this interaction they do have at the train station, because I guess we're looping back to how we started this conversation. This is her coming and like, again, putting the claws in a little bit here, whether you want to say it's calculated or if it's a defensive mechanism. It's like she sees something like there's a love here that's blossoming, and I need you to recognize that before you go off and see this other person. Now, if she wants to go on the train ride with him, which is even crazier, but I mean,
yeah,
I don't know. Let's talk about this train interaction for a bit.
To go to the movie very briefly, I love how creepy she just appears in the window. Right? I would have loved if they had done that with like lighting on stage somehow, to have her just suddenly appear like that rather than kind of walking up into the carriage. But I think it does also feel like even more of an extension of what she's been doing, because we've at least been led to believe that she pretty much lives as a shut-in, never leaving her cousin's care.
Right. Yeah.
And so for her to actually leave the compound and say, I'm going to move to Milan for 40 days to be with you,
it is a big deal.
An even bigger step. Yeah. Not just that it's obsessive following, but for her to actually go out into the world and fend for herself a little bit is how determined she is.
Yeah, I think, I don't know, like for me, I think this is the make it or break it moment. As an audience member here in this show, you're like drawn into the drama of this, or you're going to fully reject it at this point. I think this really is going to be the litmus test of like, this is a story that I am interested to see what the resolution is, or it's like, I am totally rejecting this. I do not care what happens for the rest of this, simply because of that nature that Fosca brings, that intensity that she brings to this. And I don't know, like the other thing that I think that is a reality, and I'll speak for myself here, is that it's been very helpful this season specifically to go through these lyrics as prose almost, because a lot of like the happier songs like Happiness, I'll just call that one out, you kind of get mesmerized by the melody and like the sweeping score, and then realize, oh wait, no, like he actually isn't all that happy with Clara. Like he thinks he is. So I don't know. I think there's a lot of things going on here that require like a deeper reading.
I forget. I think it's either in the book or in the audio commentary for the PBS broadcast DVD. But I think, Sondheim was talking about how a big turning point for the show was when they added this scene to humanize her more. And like you said, to what degree you buy it is going to determine how you feel about the rest of the show. I definitely in the past did not buy it at all. I still tend not to buy it, but you could read it as she's genuinely saying, I've accepted that I love you and you don't love me, and that's going to have to be enough. Which to me, saying that to him is manipulative. If that was what she actually believed, she could just leave him alone. But it is at least a moment where we see her having more calmness in how she interacts with Giorgio, and not so pleading, not so prone to outbursts, but just more reserved and resigned.
Of course, this leads into the song Loving You, which we'll cover next week. But like, it's hard because I know what I think it is for me. This does not make me a better person or anything like that. When I went to university, I took a bunch of courses on Victorian lit in particular. And in many ways, this reminds me of like Victorian/Gothic literature, where it's like big emotions and things happen. And it's like, you just gotta go along for the ride. So I've never like run up against like the character's decisions being so out of character. I think for me, having read the book and even watched the movie, although I think the movie communicates it better, at least for me, is, do I buy Giorgio at the very end falling in love with Fosca? And in the book, at least, I don't. I don't get there. And in the movie, like I said, like I do kind of get there on a certain level. I have my own feelings of love. I think takes a little bit longer, or true love takes a little bit longer than however long they actually know each other here, a few months. And in the stage show, I think it's kind of on par with the movie a little bit. Is like, do I fully buy this? I think it just depends on the actors who are able to communicate that a little bit. I guess that's my hang up. It really depends on my Giorgio, who I'm watching, is like, do I buy this person reciprocating this? I get Fosca on her level, as crazy as I think she is for the first half, and like is what we would now call toxic. But do I buy Giorgio reciprocating at the very end? And I think that's going to be different for every person.
Yeah, I think the ideal way to play it, to not have it seem so quick, is, and obviously there are feelings that Giorgio has for Fosca. The opposite of love is indifference, not hate. Mm-hmm. So he does have feelings for her, even if they are negative ones. And it'd be interesting to see somebody play a little bit more ambiguous with those feelings. More like, I think I'm starting to appreciate this fawning and I don't want to. Because then this, after loving you is more of a, okay, I'm giving in to what I have been feeling, not I'm acquiescing to what she wants me to feel.
Yeah, I think that's the thing. It's like,
I don't know how you do that, but I love it.
Yeah, like for me, it's what I buy is that Giorgio, what Giorgio learns from Fosca is that what he had with Clara was not love. Like I totally get and buy into that 100%. Absolutely. His journey through this piece is him learning like, oh, what love actually is deeper than what I thought it was before. The turn is like, do I think that he has that with Fosca? And I don't know if that's 100% true for me.
Yeah, it feels too quick. Like it feels like a good turning point, but it needs more time to breathe and to develop for it to feel natural, I think.
Interestingly enough, what this somewhat reminds me of, very, very different shows, but it's West Side Story. In that, in West Side Story, you kind of have to buy into like the Romeo and Juliet thing of Tony and Maria falling in love in 3 days or however long they know each other.
Yeah.
It's whatever, a week, we'll just say. It's like, it's very quick. You either do or you don't. And it's just like, there's just really no way around that. So you just have to buy in that they have this connection that's so deep that they're willing to kind of like die for each other after that short amount of time. And weirdly enough, hot take, but I actually do think that Tony Kushner's rewrite of the Spielberg movie gets closest for me to actually buy into those feelings.
I agree that he does a lot more of, first of all, it's not an instant, I'm obsessed, I love you, I would move the world for you. It's actually slower. it's still very quick overall, but
that's right.
When you don't jump from 0 to obsessed love, even if it's a rather quick ramp up, it still feels more authentic, easier to buy into, I think. And it is nice to see, them actually having a date and doing more things that are getting to know each other than in the stage show or the original movie. So I do agree that was a very well done approach to this issue of things moving quickly.
The issue is that there's still Ansel Elgort in that movie, so there's that. Yeah. Anything else that we want to bring up about Passion?
I would love to see a revival, just because the world and our view on relationships has changed so much in the last 31 years. I think you could do a lot to make it feel even more relevant to people today, and it would definitely be received more warmly than it was initially.
Yeah, I think so too. This is another thing that has been brought up a few different times. I do think that audiences, one, people know kind of what they're getting into when they go and see Passion now to a certain extent, or at least a good portion of the audience will know what they're getting into. But this idea of like obsessing over somebody, I actually brought this up in a recent episode as well. It's not a great like one-to-one thing, but I do think that fundamentally people understand this idea of obsessing over people and knowing a lot about them without that being reciprocated because of social media.
Yeah.
Or like online influencers and stuff like that, where it's just like, oh, I'm obsessed with this person or this people or this couple or whatever it happens to be, and that just is not being reciprocated back to you. So anyway, I just think it's easier for people to buy in. Okay, we get it. Like, we understand where this is kind of coming from. And again, whether or not you buy into the ultimate resolution is going to be dependent on the person.
You're saying you want a remake in the modern day where Fosca is just DMing Giorgio and he's ignoring her.
Correct. Giorgio is a TikTok influencer, and
yeah, I believe that.
Got a hot bod, and and she is so down for that. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. We should make it happen.
It writes itself. What can I say? All right, Alex, thank you so much for being here. So the wrap-up question I've been asking everybody here this season, because this show is called Passion, right now, and you can take this in any direction you want to, but right now, what would you consider the thing you're the most passionate about?
I have been very, very much into Broadway history lately, coming to terms with the fact that my knowledge overall skews very recent, and I don't know as much about classic Broadway as I would like. And so,
is there a specific era that you're delving into?
I'm trying to become decently well acquainted with everything after Showboat. So I'm not going to bother with pre-Showboat and all the reviews, but just learning more about trends that have happened across time. Like, it makes me feel better about the jukebox bio musical trend that we have these days, to know that there have been weird trends in the past, and it hopefully will also pass by. Like in the early 40s, there were a lot of shows putting lyrics to opera or classical music. Hammerstein did Carmen Jones. They did Songs of Norway with the Edvard Grieg music. Like, that's a really random thing to catch on briefly. So we will survive the bio jukebox musical.
At least we hope.
We sure hope so.
I often wonder about that. This is going to go in just a weird direction just for a tiny moment, but like me being the film fan that I am, like you see this all the time too, about like, why was there all these types of movies for like 5 years and then they kind of just like died out type of thing, or this genre was like for 20 years like number one and they kind of faded out. This is what I'm hoping for currently, because as much of a nerd as I was growing up, I'm like kind of like superheroed out at this point. I'm like, can we move on to the next thing? But you don't really know you're in the next thing until you're like a few years into that thing. So it's like, I don't know, maybe it's already started and they just haven't realized it yet. So we'll see.
Maybe we'll find out in time.
Alex, if people wanted to stay in contact with you, what is the easiest way for them to do so?
My Instagram is AlexAsp44, which is mostly just me posting playbills. I'm not very good at staying active on social media. Or the SondheimDatabase.com website has all of the productions and shows, things I've talked about before. I'm still trying to keep that up to date and expanding. I actually got an email from Rick Pender, the author of the Stephen Sondheim Encyclopedia, that someone had told him about it. So that was really cool to hear from somebody so legendary about this silly little project that I started for myself. So that was really
so cool. Yeah, that's great. Thank you so much.
All right, thank you.
Thank you so much for listening. You can send emails to puttingittogetherpodcast@gmail.com. You can also follow me The Kyle Marshall on Instagram. This is an independent production, and you can support the show on Patreon by going to patreon.com/puttingittogetherpodcast. Putting It Together is available on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, and pretty much anywhere you get podcasts from. Consider subscribing so that you never miss an episode. Next week, we're talking about the song Loving You. It's not a choice, it's what I podcast about. As always, a big thank you to the great Chris Taniguchi, who designed the podcast artwork, and Nick Driscoll for composing our theme music. Well, we've reached the end of our episode. Yes, I know. Goodbye for now.